So there was a post from a guy. I don't think this is a real name, so I'm not even going to call him by it. But works for Kotaku. As an editor, okay? Free Palestine in the bio, what's new? And this guy said this to Grums, who's a friend of the show. He's been on the channel before. We've talked games. And he says, and he's so wrong. He's wrong the first sentence in. And this is what he says in response to Grums here. Mark Kern. A grifter is anyone who is willing to run a culture war crusade against people living their lives while profiting from it and producing nothing of tangible substance. Well, first of all, grifter, the term, by literal definition, has nothing to do with culture war. It's about swindling people. So it's whether or not you're a swindler in the petty sense or not. That's really it. Now, granted, it's now been reduced to meaning guy that you don't like being successful. That's really all that it fucking means nowadays, right? No, it doesn't have to do with swindling, conning people. No, none of that. He says, in your case, in the case of Mark, it's pretending to care about gaming and profiting off your followers. Acting like this guy doesn't care anything about games is quite the statement to make. Big time. If that's what you want to run with, great. But again, that's the point, right? And he tries to provide an example here where he's like, I guess because he's talking about things, and then he says, hey, man, if you like some of the things I say, please, you can subscribe. So apparently, asking people to subscribe, if you like the things that he says, means grifter. Apparently, having commentary he doesn't find valuable by any means. Now, granted, I don't expect a leftist to understand markets and how they work, right? I have no problem with anybody, and making money for sure off of their commentary. Obviously, I say this as a guy that makes money off of his commentary doing YouTube and stuff I do, in the public space as well with doing Blaze and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't think that qualifies as grifting by any means. And I could see where, yeah, you can consider it a grift if you consider their positions to be, not consider, if you can prove that their positions are only held because it's profitable. If you can prove that, go for it. But I know leftists hate money, but guy making money is not what it means to be a grifter. If you say that he, again, is tricking people, he's swindling people out of their money, these are positions that he don't actually hold, there's nothing, it's not his genuine belief, so he's only, and yes, there's a lot of grifters in that context that are out there, people that take contrarian positions just to take them, right? But just because they disagree with you does not necessarily mean that that's not a position that they hold, okay? Now, leftists think that they, especially in gaming, own it. And to be fair, well, they've infiltrated everything, so you can make the argument that they are the most influential. So when someone is calling them out on what they're doing or exist among their ranks, well, you are one to not or should not exist according to them. So they can't grift, right? They're not swindling people out of anything, though you can make the argument that they are, the leftists, that is. So maybe it's projection, which is something that they really, really like to do. But the general point that Grums was making in his original post is correct, and that is that there's these buzz terms that they try to utilize to devalue your position, okay? They want to delegitimize your position. And the best way or the most effective way to do that is to find a term that pretty much everybody agrees is negative, right? So that's where the funny mustached man and his associates term came from, and why obviously there's not a whole lot of folks running around like that, right? You got even clowns accusing Gary because he makes videos about fucking Star Wars or something, Marvel, Disney, somehow is white supremacy. You see, everybody agrees that's a by itself is a term that in general has a negative connotation, just by itself. So they use it to, again, devalue your position and maybe even incentivize other people to attack you because you don't want to be associated with that, right? But I think the game now that people understand it is that those words don't mean anything because you're using them in an incorrect form or fashion. So this is why I make the argument all the time that when it comes to these general leftists, especially on the internet, you shouldn't be arguing with these guys like that at all. There's one thing to argue with the idea that maybe there's a sector of the audience that may see this and be convinced. But if you think that you're going to convince that clown who's not leading with any sort of bit of reason and is strictly on emotion, there's no need to try to get in, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to sit up here and take all this time to argue with them on why you're not whatever. I always bring this point up, and you guys remember back during my days when I would go back and forth with people long before the Rippaverse, where, you know, there was this one chick. And I can't even remember what my original statement was. This is back in like 2018, maybe. And she called me a transphobe as part of a non-testicle, non-argument. I didn't even address it. I just moved on like they didn't even say anything, and I was addressing the crux of the position, right? And she stops, and she's like, or maybe it was a shim. I don't know, they, them, I don't give a fuck. It was like, so you're not going to address this claim of supposed transphobia? And I said, no. I reject the premise. And she malfunctioned because she didn't know what to do. Because she was anticipating that she was going to be able to derail the conversation. And then I was going to focus on try to prove to her that I wasn't a transphobe. It's like, I don't give a fuck about that. I know that term doesn't mean anything coming from you. So no, I'm not going to sit up here and argue that. We're arguing this totally separate point. It has nothing to do with anything. So I don't give a fuck what you're calling me there. I have no desire to do that. And they fucking started glitching in real time. They had no idea what to do because that exists outside the script. The script was planned, right? Literal NPCs. They are operating with this formed dialogue. And because I went out of the means of what they were programmed to do, they didn't know what to do. That's how you handle these clowns. Because they have no power, man. These words don't mean jack diddly squat. So Mark's original point is correct. They don't mean anything coming from these clowns. Thanks for watching. Be sure to head over to Rippaverse.com to check out our comic book company. We have books, plenty of merchandise, and even some glorious animations from Rippaverse Studios.